You're listening to the Greenhouse and Indoor Cultivation Podcast, presented by GrowAdvisor. Tune in to learn strategies to grow your business, get the most out of your cultivation systems, and advance your horticulture career.
Hello, growers and business owners. It's Brandon and Will, your favorite podcast host for the controlled environment agriculture industry. I just wanted to tell you, if you haven't heard yet, that we'll also be launching guides, blogs, and videos at GrowAdvisorWorldwide.com. I'm really excited about it because we're going to be giving people practical, tactical guidance, instruction, all filled with expert advice, not just from us here at GrowAdvisor, but from other greenhouse and indoor farming experts. Each episode will show a new expert from traditional horticulture, cannabis, vertical farming, vegetable farming, system design. It's going to be amazing. So if you want to learn how to scale your horticulture business and career from start to cultivation success, you're going to want to tune in. Go to our website, like us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we already have a wait list, so join our newsletter so you can be the first to know when we release new guidance and strategies to realize your true growth potential. All right, I'm going back to doing podcasts and stuff. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. All right, so let's get into it. Today on the line, we have Kurt Koffman, a director of strategic accounts at Seed Talent, the premier company for talent and jobs in the ever-evolving cannabis industry. He comes to us with a really diverse background in the cannabis industry, working at Green Thumb Industries, also doing recruiting over at Altria, amongst other things. He has deep experience networking and building a cannabis social business network, and we look forward to speaking with him today. And then along with me, as usual, we have William Goodin, our VP of Business Development at GrowAdvisor.
Thank you, Brandon, and pleasure to meet you, Kurt. So as Brandon indicated, I'm the VP of Business Development here at GrowAdvisor. I've been in the industry for about 6 years, having helped start a couple of grows locally here in Denver, Colorado. And outside of that, I've started several different cannabis companies, mostly in the controlled environment agricultural space. Really excited to be here. Really excited to speak with you and Kurt. And let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be here. Again, my name is Kurt Koffman, working over at Seed Talent, where we focus on an end-to-end solution providing education and staffing throughout the cannabis business for for plant touching businesses all the way through ancillary. I got my start in cannabis working with Green Thumb Industries, where I helped manage sales here in the state of Illinois and kind of helped shepherd us from medical only to adult use. In that time, kind of took up a jack of all trades mentality, working throughout the business, helped lead and launch their internship program, helped do all the corporate staff training on cannabis, and just tried to, figure out anywhere that I could add value to the organization. But really excited to be here today and talk about networking and the cannabis landscape as a whole.
Great. It's great to have you on. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, today we're talking about growing your cannabis business social network. And for those listening, obviously we're all familiar with the term networking, interacting with others to exchange information to develop professional or social contacts. And I really think today's call is going to take a little more the route of online social networking amidst 2020's COVID-19. More people are going to dedicated websites and applications to interact with users and find digital ways to connect. And I would really love to hear your thoughts, Kurt, on how people can connect with others in today's digital world. Trade shows are no longer such a thing. Everyone's moving virtual, and it's really a change of pace for a lot of those out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, obviously a timely topic. I think the biggest thing on networking through social media and through the different digital landscapes is about kind of approaching it with no fear, but a good plan. I think a lot of the folks that we talk to and work with are hesitant, to reach out to that potential hiring manager or that leader of the business that they'd really like to be a part of. But I think the biggest thing, and it's no different than, being in person and working up the courage to, go up and talk with somebody, but, it becomes kind of an awkward entrance, I think, on the digital landscape, but it's become all that more important to put yourself out there. So I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give for folks is if you know where you want to work, and by that I mean you spent the research or spent the time doing the research, kind of the corporate values that you're looking for, and you found an organization that aligns with that, then you figure out who the hiring managers are and the decision makers, and don't be nervous to be rejected. I think if you want to get into this space, you got to put yourself out there. And so I think LinkedIn is a great way to connect. I think there's, an emerging class of kind of cannabis focused, digital networks out there. Utilize whatever means that you feel comfortable with. But then, when you kind of get to that point of uncomfortability, take that brave leap and put yourself out there. And, I was talking with Brandon before we got started. When I got my start in the cannabis space, I applied to several different jobs, including to being the assistant for a CEO of a major MSO, because I wanted to be in the space. And it kind of, it took that networking and it took the connections in that building. But the biggest piece of advice I can give folks is, put yourself out there. Don't be scared, but be thoughtful. Make sure when you reach out that it's not just a shotgun approach, that you put some thought to the messaging that you have in your LinkedIn message or in your email. And that you give a personal anecdote that shows that, you're interested in the company, you've done your research. And if there's an opportunity to add value, and I'm sure that's something we can kind of talk about, throughout the show today, networking is about adding value and connecting, the folks within your network with people that can add value to their business or their operation. So if you see an opportunity to constructively add value or to take your skill set and potentially offer it up to somebody within your network, that's really where you're going to start to build those long-lasting relationships. And that's where the stuff that's really exciting can come from.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's unpack a little bit of that there. You said a lot of good stuff. Someone once told me the currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity. And, I think that speaks to providing value, whether you're networking to get a job, whether you're networking amongst other businesses to promote your business. You certainly want to provide value. And, I think that folds back to planning to network, identifying your potential opportunities, potential contacts, and then finding ways to add value to their lives, professionally and otherwise. So in today's world, how would you go about doing that? It's not as simple as walking around a trade show floor and handing out business cards, which in an industry that may not be as accessible, like the cannabis industry, for some folks that are outside of the industry and or for new businesses. What would you recommend? How would you go about that?
Yeah, and I think, you're hitting on a couple of big points. I think trade shows, and, I know folks in the trade show industry, and I hate to say it, but trade shows we're losing popularity in a lot of industries because of kind of some of the stuff that we've already talked about, where most of the networking that was not happening from 9 to 5 during the trade show hours, but was really happening from, 5 to who knows when, after the event. And so, I think that trend has already been kind of going in that direction. And obviously COVID and the different things that are going on have accelerated that. But I think, the number one thing is to do your research and to understand kind of what you're hoping for and what you're going for. And I think networking for the sake of networking is fine. But, particularly if you're interested in getting into a job or selling a service or doing these things, understand, who's out there, who's in that target list. I know it kind of sounds, a little salesy to have like a target list and whatnot, but, I think coming organized and coming prepared is the best way to do it. And then again, I start on LinkedIn because I found that, there's a lot of the folks that, I'm looking for are already on LinkedIn. Again, I know there's kind of cannabis focused networking groups like LeafWire and things like that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is preparation and knowing to the value that you have. And so I think, understanding again, who you're speaking to, how you may be able to help them, whether that's yourself or through a connection that you may have. But again, no different than a lot of parts of our lives, the key to success is preparation in those communications.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's go back to some of the social networks. I think for many of those in this industry, coming from whether it be infrastructure related backgrounds, cultivation backgrounds, the digital landscape may seem quite different. And in the cannabis space, it's certainly diverse. I know there's plenty of social networks out there. As you mentioned, LeafWire, Grow Diaries, Growers Network, and then all the traditional social networks like Reddit, LinkedIn. You mentioned that LinkedIn's your favorite. It's personally my favorite as well for connecting professionally. I think it still works in this industry, just on a one-to-one level. But what about some of these upcoming social networking platforms for cannabis? How do you feel about those? Do you have any favorites? And how would you go about trying to get started in a new landscape like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, to be honest with you, my experience on some of the emerging platforms is limited. I've heard good things about, things like LeafWire and Grow Diaries and whatnot. But, I hate to say I'm a traditionalist. I think, a lot of the stuff that we're looking for on just kind of the surface level stuff is achievable in kind of our traditional methods, whether that be LinkedIn or Instagram or Reddit for certain things. Again, I think you have to go, where your target audience is. So, I think sometimes if you're looking more on the grow side, you get some, really phenomenal content and networking within some of the blogs and whatnot. If you're looking more professional services and whatnot, LinkedIn is still a great approach. I would just say that, the biggest thing that I have found, particularly on the recruiting side, is just making sure that your whatever social media that you have out there is set up for your success and demonstrates kind of who you are through and through. We always used to say, anything that's customer facing, we need to be proud of. And I think, when you think about it, your personal brand is essentially what you're building within your social network. And anything that is, again, customer facing, and customers might be future customers or just people that you hope to meet. You want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile picture is professional. It doesn't need to be suit and tie, but it definitely needs to, I think, be, representative of who you are. So if you're somebody, that prefers a more casual look, go with that, but it still should look, professional. If you're on Instagram and whatnot, making sure that the posts and the messages and those type of things are all in line with the values that you want people to associate with you. A good anecdote is I had another recruiter connect with me, and I connected with him, always looking to network. And when I went through some of the LinkedIn posts that I had seen him, recently post or it did not align with my values at all. And so that was something I think that to just be conscious of is, your social media should be representative of you and your personal brand and your personal story, but also make sure that you understand that, it's not just personal. That people do look at it and the things that we post and the way that we represent ourselves, they do have, either benefits or consequences on the flip side. But yeah, I would just definitely say, regardless of what the platform is, keep your information up to date. Make sure that your information in there is actionable. So if it's on LinkedIn, people are probably looking at your profile to see what you've done. So make sure that you've got bullet points under each of your job titles and your roles. Just make sure, again, that kind of through and through professionalism and representation of who you are can be really experienced kind of, within that social media platform.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's really, a lack of many people engaging in some of these platforms because they also don't think it's for them. They think a suit and tie is required. And say you're a horticulturalist in a greenhouse and you're looking for a new greenhouse position. They may not directly go to LinkedIn. And, I think, in my perspective, they probably should be. I think that that's a great place to connect still. But that kind of brings me to, there's a lot of niches in the cannabis industry that are very different than other more traditional businesses. So I think because of that, people find a lot of confusion in how to network, how to build a network, and how to plan for networking when they say, well, my potential manager, it lives in a greenhouse all day. Why would he want to hear from me on social media? But the reality is that everybody's on social media these days, and the world's only gone more digital in 2020. So for those that are working in a niche, how would you suggest to them to build out their profile? And have you seen anyone do that well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's an all-time great question, particularly, if you're listening to the podcast and you're somebody who's a grower, an extraction technician, or somebody who's back of the house, I think all the more reason that you need to put yourself out there and make sure that you are, well represented on things like LinkedIn, especially because you got to go to where your desires are at. And so if you're hoping to advance your career or you're hoping to get that next big opportunity, the folks that know you and know how amazing you are already in your greenhouse. So what we need to do is set you up for success on a broader scale. And I can tell you, we recruit, for extraction technicians, for grow folks, all the way from, entry level, all the way up, to master growers. And I can tell you, it's a challenge to find those people outside of kind of the networks and the circles that you have. And so most of those niche roles we're finding through our network. And that becomes a challenge because your network, as much as we're here to talk about network, everyone's network is only so big. And so if you're, listening to the podcast and you're thinking, hey, I'm ready for that next step in my career, or you're, on the outside of the industry looking in some way, I would really encourage you to take a look and do kind of a self-brand evaluation. And I'm not somebody, as you can see, relatively casual guy. I'm not somebody who always, is up on my social media and whatnot. But again, you have to prepare not for the job you have, but for the job that you want or the career that you want. And so, I would really encourage folks, if they're listening to this and they don't have a LinkedIn set up, or they, haven't logged in 3 or 4 years, to change that. There are growers that, I'm connected with on LinkedIn that do a hell of a job. There's a grower in Michigan and I don't know if name dropping here is a good idea, but Flourish in Michigan, one of their head growers, and her name is escaping me at the moment. She posts pictures of their grow regularly. And I can tell you, not only do I like it, but I've seen MSO CEOs and different people outside of the state of Michigan who have now started to see her images and follow her. And I can tell you, when we get our next, big grow job, it's the people that are top of mind who have demonstrated that they A, have professionalism, B, have the skill set, but C, we know that they're out there through their efforts online and through different events and whatnot. Those are the folks that are getting the first call. So again, if you're ready for that next step in your career, or just kind of looking to make some adjustments or whatnot, just make sure your web presence is there, and then don't be bashful about your work. Take good pictures, make sure that they're, pictures you're going to be proud of, but show us what you're working with, literally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it really comes back to showing your success, right?
Yeah.
You really want to build a personal brand, and you want people to know what it is that you can do. And success comes in many factors, whether it be managing multiple cannabis facilities or simply improving the workflow at your last job. People want to align themselves with others that have been successful, or at least can take that initiative. So I think those platforms are a really great place to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the insight on all of that. I think when we're talking about, online media, where a lot of the confusion kind of breaks down for those that maybe are in a niche position, back of house, as you said, is they think that it's all self-promotion, right? So in some regards, you want to show your success, you're planning to network, but you're also starting a community, right? And I think being part of a community means you're an individual contributor, and you're also becoming a matchmaker in the industry. And in doing so, I found that when you're a matchmaker, it really opens a lot of doors for you, both immediately and in the future. And, I think a lot of people are hesitant to reach out to recruiters, thinking that maybe they're not part of their network. Maybe there needs to be a specific focus. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want everybody to start calling you right after this just to chat and get to know you better, and maybe waste your time. But to me, it seems that in your position, that's exactly what you want. You want to expand your network, and you want to learn what people are doing out there, and that's actually okay. Do you think that'd be a right assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'd be curious, William, your take on some of this stuff, as well. But, one of the reasons that I love the cannabis industry, and I guess to a certain extent, maybe I'm old school in this, but one of the things that I love about cannabis that brought me into the cannabis industry is the community. And so, one of the things that I have concerns around, legalization and kind of the efforts and the push is that loss of community that is there. Because, when it was maybe in a less than legal market, you were networking and you knew your people, and that's how you found different products and different things that were out there. And as we transition to the much needed normalized and legalized market, I think there is a little bit of the loss of the community that has made cannabis so special. As a recruiter, I think the biggest thing that I work with folks on is no different than a real estate agent or a lawyer or where you buy your cannabis. You have to be judicious in how you pick those people and make sure that your recruiter gives you the good vibe, feels like they can represent who you are. So I would definitely say if there's folks listening that are looking to move to their next, the next level in their career or, get different connections and networks, please reach out to me. Shoot me an email, Kurt@seedtalent.com, and I'd be happy to connect with you. Ultimately it is about fostering a community. And I'm happy to kind of touch a little bit more on kind of the process of recruiting and what that looks like. But I'd be curious, William, I know you've been in the cannabis space for a while. Have you seen kind of a maintaining of community kind of in the different worlds that you're playing in?
Yeah, Kurt, it's actually very interesting you say that. I can remember trade shows from back in 2015, 2016. It definitely felt, and specifically in cannabis, definitely felt like community was a lot more tight knit. Right. Definitely less suits and ties back in that day. And no, it's definitely evolved, and it's I don't think the word diluted is appropriate, but it's definitely evolved. And I think there has been a little bit of a loss in a little bit in the sense of community. Lately I've really enjoyed going, and not lately, I guess, because of COVID, but as of even last year, I really enjoyed actually going to a lot of the hemp trade shows. I thought they were a lot more, it felt like a lot more like there was a better sense of community at those hemp trade shows. And it's definitely evolving, and I know it'll continue to evolve. It certainly has this year with everything kind of going online. I would have just a quick question for you, Kurt. Leveraging LinkedIn as your networking platform, do you have any other tips on reaching out? I know a lot of folks don't necessarily read LinkedIn messages, but do you have any advice for any of the folks out there on specifically what they can do to reach out?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think, you start with just the basics, which is make a connect, try to connect with them. I know LinkedIn only allows a certain amount of characters in that message, but, I think most people are open to adding, to their network. I think really where the work comes in is after they've accepted that connection. So again, I think that's where you put some thought to, what you're trying to get out of that relationship, and what you can add to that relationship, and then be short and concise. Your goal is to get, a phone call set up or a coffee or a meeting. It's not to give your entire life story. And I think that's where a lot of folks that I've spoken with kind of fall short, is they think, this is my one shot at communicating, and I'm going to get everything I need to down in this one note. And that's where it comes off a little bit like, So, your goal is to get on the phone call, because most people, when you get them on a phone call, or you can, if it's responsible with everything going on, meet them for coffee. Your goal is to, dangle a carrot. It's to say, hey, I'm so happy to make your connection. I'd love the opportunity to, and then say what your goal is. And if they're into it, great. And if they're not, it happens. The other thing that I think sometimes, people are nervous to do, and I think there's some people out there that, that maybe already get a lot of calls and will cringe when I say this. But if you really think you've got, some value to add, whether it's from a product standpoint or you as a potential candidate, call them. And people say, well, how do you do that? There's so many different, this is 2020. You can Google people's names, you can do those type of things. And in the most respectful and responsible and appropriate manner, if you find their number out there and you give somebody a call and you say, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but I sent you a LinkedIn message a couple days ago and I just wanted to follow up. Is now an okay time? And if they say no and they never call you back, it wasn't meant to be. And, that's sometimes I think the thing that we struggle with a little bit is that rejection or that risk. But Tom Segura is one of my favorite comedians, and he has a bit that ends talking about the best customer service quote he ever got was "Some people suck." And I think that's like the most apt thing, where if you send in, your intentions are good, maybe they don't suck, maybe they're just really busy, but if somebody doesn't get back to you, it's okay. So that's what I would say is, just send them a message, make sure your profile is set up for success. Because if I get a message from somebody and their profile picture looks like, it was taken in 1997 on a flip phone and, it just looks like it wasn't meant to be, I may not respond. But if they have a really professional and engaging LinkedIn, because my first thing when I get a message is to click their profile. And then just the last thing on that is, your point on the hemp, events. I think what we're going to see post COVID is it's going to be the people that are creative in how they set events and how they network beyond the traditional, cocktails after a trade show. It's the people that are going to put on engaging events. I worked in the motorcycle industry for quite some time, and it was a challenge to get people sometimes to go to trade shows. But where did you find people? You found people at events like Daytona Bike Week and Sturgis and those kind of things. And I think as we start to get, some of the kind of, the laws get more in line with where we're hoping, it's going to be the people that put on creative events that draw people in regardless of the networking, because it's such an engaging event. And oh, by the way, you can network while you're here, that are really going to see the success.
Right.
I love that. Yeah, I think more exciting events, in my mind, virtual conferences are not very user-friendly. It's not providing a lot of value. It's like a kind of bloated Zoom call in some ways, but exciting events are definitely needed. For both of you guys, Kurt and William, you touched on, so we've dangled the carrot, we've potentially met for coffee, we've done all those things right. And then I think a lot of people get caught up with the follow-up. How do you follow up afterwards? People get nervous, fear of rejection starts to set in potentially. What are your best suggestions for keeping that relationship alive? Maybe there's not an immediate position available for you, but that's not to say there won't be one in a few months. So as a recruiter, how do you see the best way to address that?
Yeah, and I think Will's going to have an interesting perspective on this, because again, it's no different than selling, and that's my background is in sales, and I happened to stumble into staffing because I saw a need while I was working in the space, and our goal at Seed Talent is to ultimately raise the level of the bar of the candidates that are coming in. And so again, I'm a sales guy coming into the recruiting sphere, so you'll have to excuse it if it sounds too salesy, but the reality is you've got to close the deal. And so when you have those events and you meet for that coffee, it should end with some follow-up steps. Hey, it was great speaking to you today. I know we discussed X, Y, or Z. Would it be all right if I followed up with you on Tuesday just to see where we're at on this? Set the precedent that you're going to follow up. And again, it's a series of things that happen. And I think what happens is people build narratives in their head for why. And again, it happens to salespeople, it happens to candidates, where it's, they didn't seem like they really liked me, or they weren't that interested. You don't know until you get a no. So what I encourage folks to do is be respectful and to follow up. But I also do, I don't want to give, a shameless plug here. I also think that's the advantage of working, if you are looking for, a position or whatnot, working with a recruiter, because we have those relationships with our clients where we're kind of working on both ends. We work in the best interest of our client, no doubt. But we also understand, the value that great candidates bring to us as a recruiting and staffing agency. And if that one position isn't the right opportunity for the candidate, the next company or the next client may be. And so we try to do a great job of making sure that we're communicating well on the candidate side as well as on the client side. So if that is something you're a little bit nervous on, I encourage you to reach out to us, or if there's a recruiter that you're more comfortable with, but reach out to us and we're happy to talk you through the process. But the biggest thing is to follow up, to wait for that no. And when you get a no, don't hesitate to ask for constructive feedback. Hey, I totally understand it's not the right time. Just for moving forward, was there certain things that the other candidate had that I can maybe work to solidify in my background? Or if you're selling a service and trying to get, hey, absolutely, totally understand. Was there anything particular in the pitch that, where I may have lost your interest or whatnot? And some people might say no, but other people may give you that key to the next customer to say, absolutely, you did everything perfect, but this last little feature that you touched on, it's actually not what we need. And that'll even give you the opportunity to say, oh, shoot, I didn't even let you know that that's actually not a necessary thing. But Will, I'd be curious, on the sales side, because it's kind of no different. You're really just selling yourself.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that follow-up is absolutely critical. And it's a numbers game like anything else. And I heard a pretty interesting phrase recently, but rejection is the universe's protection. So just because you get rejected, just because it's not a good fit, it doesn't mean that you just move on to the next one. Again, it's a numbers game, but being very high level with your follow-up and really sticking to your commitments as well. If I promise that I'm going to, send you this information on Tuesday, I'm definitely going to stick to my commitment. That's absolutely critical as well in your follow-ups. You always want to stick to those commitments. And, that seems a little maybe sophomoric, but it's definitely something that I find, especially in this industry, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a lack of following up and sticking to those commitments. So I think you raised some great points there, Kurt.
Yeah, big time. And I guess, I just add just a personal anecdote for if somebody's listening, they're a little bit discouraged. So at GTI, I applied for 3 different jobs. I mentioned, assistant to the CEO, another sales position, and then finally the job that I ended up getting. And when I applied to the first job, I sent probably too long of a note to the senior vice president of sales. And the note straight up said, I understand that there may be candidates out there that have more experience, but I believe my grit and determination will be a greater factor in my success. And I'd love to take you to breakfast, lunch, or dinner at your convenience to walk you through that. I didn't get a response on the note, but 6 months later, another position opened up, and I got a call back and ended up having just a wonderful time working there, and a great opportunity, and ended up working with the person that I sent the note to, and he got it, and we ended up joking about it throughout my time there. But that's the kind of stuff that you don't always know where the seed that you planted will sprout, not to use a cannabis pun here, but when you're planting seeds and you're getting that network built, you never know where things can go. And so to the point of the conversation, follow up, but just make sure, if it's not the right fit, that you end on a good note, because it might not be the right fit for that job or that company, but this the network you're building, you'd be surprised at how connected it can be. So just make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward. You're thankful for people's time, and you never know when you're going to say the right thing or get the right chance to capitalize on the opportunity.
Yeah, and it sounds like your experience with GTI has been, was very valuable for you. Yeah. Did you have GTI kind of on the top of your list when you were searching for different companies, and were you? It sounds like you were pretty persistent with your following up and playing that numbers game.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm so thankful for my time there. They gave me a great opportunity to start my career in cannabis with what I think is one of the best organizations in the business. But yeah, when I started that process, I kind of knew what was important to me. And I had some different folks in my network that, worked at some other companies and GTI. I'll name drop a good friend of mine, David Bleitcher, who's the brand manager for dog walkers over there. And he was the one kind of throughout the process encouraging me to stay committed and whatnot. But yeah, I think that goes back to the point that we touched on earlier, which is if you're going to go fully at something, do the research. I had done the research and narrowed down the companies that I was going to be applying to a smaller list. And when I sent a note or did a follow-up, it had specifics about the company and the reason that I wanted to work there. And once I got the opportunity to do the interviews, I was able to communicate within those interviews that this wasn't just some passe thing that I was hoping to do, but was something that I felt was, part of my life calling. And I know that sounds a little extreme for some people, but I know that there's a lot of folks listening that have, dedicated their life to the craft of indoor agriculture or cannabis or hemp or whatever it may be. And you're sitting there hoping for that next opportunity. And it's okay to be honest with people. Again, be professional in how you communicate it. But, one of the things that I think so many employers and so many clients that we're looking for are looking for in a candidate that is hard to get on a resume is passion. And so if you're able to get on the phone with somebody, meet somebody for coffee, see somebody at an event, God willing, and you're able to exude that passion for this space, that's the thing that is so difficult to communicate, I think, in a digital landscape in itself, or on a resume. And so that's the thing, if this is your lifeblood, if cannabis and, indoor ag or hemp or whatnot is your lifeblood, communicate that in a professional way. And that's the type of stuff that people love to be inspired by.
I love that. Well, we're coming up to about 30 minutes here, and I got to say, I really appreciate you coming on. And you heard it straight from Kurt. Get out there, plan to network, know what you're looking for, get on LinkedIn, and start promoting your personal brand, and hopefully bring some honesty and passion to the industry at the same time, which you clearly do, my friend. So thank you again. Nice to have you on.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, as always, to work with you guys. And, for anybody listening, if anything, sparked your interest, please visit us at seedtalent.com. We'd love to work with you and help place you at great companies like AgTech.